In the book Will, the passenger delaying flight, researcher, novelist and writer Barbara Adair takes us on a 24-hour roller coaster tale based at the Charles De Gaulle International Airport in France. The book follows Volker, a German man traveling from Frankfurt to Namibia on a one-way ticket trying to escape some of his life's misfortunes. On his journey, we get to meet characters with fascinating stories such as a trans woman, a person with dwarfism, a pornographer, a child trafficker, a murderer that the traveller encounters on this journey. Now, to tell us more about this thought-provoking read, Barbara joins us now via Skype. Barbara, a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you very much, Simpiwe. Thank you for allowing me on the show.
In your own words, Barbara, give us a brief synopsis of the book as well as what propelled you to write it.
I suppose it's about the story of a man who's traveling from Europe to Africa. He doesn't really know where he's going. He's just going to Africa, this one country. And so I thought to myself, many people think that there's only one story about Africa. There's only one Africa. There's not many countries with 54 countries. There's not many countries with 54,000 people and whatever. But so I thought that I must put in a story in which there are many characters, in which there are many stories. And so one undermines the only one story in many senses.
Let's now dissect the character of Volker. Who is he and what propelled him to embark on this journey to Africa?
He's coming to Africa because he's trying to escape his past in Europe. So in many senses, it's a metaphor. People come to the so-called New World in an attempt to get away from what they know and what they don't like. Whether they like what they like in the New World or the so-called New World, I don't know.
And you could have set this book, Barbara, in any other airport. So what was it really about the Charles de Gaulle airport that appealed to you?
I suppose the Charles de Gaulle airport I've been to, and it's a strange place with myriad shops and people and things and places, and it's difficult to get around. But in addition to that, I was told a story by a man who experienced exactly this. They came to the airport and they hung around for 24 hours. So in many senses, it was based on that.
Well, as I've mentioned in the intro, the book introduces us to interesting characters. Please take us through some of their stories.
Well, one of them is a woman who's been spurned by her husband. He's had an affair with another woman. So what she does is she takes her savings, she books a plane on the flight with the lover, who's no longer the lover actually, and in the middle of the airport, Charles de Gaulle Airport, she murders her. There's a pornographer who's making movies. Some of these movies are actually award-winning movies in one of the toilets at the airport. There's a person with dwarfism who is in fact a so-called terrorist who's assisting people to become terrorists, but he doesn't really have a calling. He doesn't have principles, or he doesn't have morality. And there's a child trafficker who's actually quite a nice guy. Those are the kind of people that Volker encounters.
Wow. And I think the book is quite metaphorical in its nature and in detailing how people can just walk in and out of one's life. Am I correct?
It's very metaphorical in that you walk through the airport and you meet people and you don't meet them. But at the same time, you formulate ideas about them because of what they look like or what they say, and you have one story about them. And in fact, there are many stories that they have in relation to them.
And this book has been described as thought-provoking, graphic, representational, and of course comical. But as its author, how would you describe it?
I would describe it as a very cynical satire. It's a satire on how people think, how they stereotype people, how they stereotype continents like Africa, how they stereotype people who they don't believe are morally upright, like pedophiles and trans people. So for me, it's satirical and cynical in many senses.
Well, I found the structure of the book quite interesting there, Barbara, especially how you used references to put context to the storyline. Tell us all about that.
References, you mean in intertextual references or references in the sense of, yes.
Precisely.
I don't believe that people own words. I believe in many senses that we use the words of others all the time. And as we don't use words, we need to use those words of others and so change their meaning and change their context and change what people understand about them. In fact, give them a new understanding. Give words a new meaning. In capitalism, we own everything. We don't own words.
So when the structure of the book was quite graphical and your use of such characters as a pornographer, as a child trafficker and a murderer, what did you have in mind in terms of capturing the imagination of the reader?
I wanted the reader to look at these people and think, wow, these are interesting people. These are not repellent people. These are not hideous people. These are actually quite interesting people, and they have something interesting to tell. In the same way that Volker, who's looking at them, doesn't actually know their stories. They just pass him in the airport. He doesn't even formulate some of their stories. But I wanted to test people's imagination, and I wanted to test their understandings of stereotypes.
So in short, you wanted us to look beyond those particular stereotypes of those characters.
I wanted people to look beyond those stereotypes and look beyond the fact that people look like and have a single story to tell. Because not that the story's untrue, it's just not the only one.
Right. And before I let you go, Barbara, as a novelist, what would you say makes a good novel?
I think a good novel is something that grips you, something that you can't put down, whether that's the story, whether that's the characters, whether that's the description, whether that's the style. It's something that you think, oh, wow, I want to go to bed and read it tonight. Not something you think, oh, my goodness, I've got to get through that.
How does the story end then? Are we likely to see a sequel to, how Volker has fared in Namibia?
You never can tell. Possibly he's faring brilliantly. Possibly he's like, I don't know, curled up and died. I'm not sure.
Please, Barbara, please come up with a sequel. We really want to know. Hey, but thank you so much for chatting to us this morning.
Thank you very much, Simpiwe. Thank you.
All right, it's a pleasure. That was researcher, novelist and writer Barbara Adair joining us on Skype to speak about her thought-provoking but equally comical third book titled Will the Passenger Delaying Flight?